How do you define crime? Robbery, murder, assault, rape, scamming. But what about the other crimes that we only whisper about? Crimes that unfold daily at the highest levels of power.
These are the crimes of the so-called respectable man. Crimes that often go unpunished. Corruption, bribery, embezzlement, misuse of funds, fraud, election tampering, abuse of public office, and the list goes on.
So the question we asked tonight is, what is the price we pay for corruption and white-collar crime?
Crime Stop Jamaica 311 in association with TVJ, Musson Foundation, National Bakery, King Alarm and Grace Kennedy present CS311 with Deirdre Dixon and Leroy Hall.
Just because a criminal wears a suit and tie or official uniform doesn't make him any less of a criminal. Just because she has a certificate or two on the wall and many letters behind her name doesn't stop her from being an offender.
And even if no violence or bloodshed or weapon is involved, doesn't make it any less of a crime. Corruption is eating away at our society, and many of us choose to participate in it or happily ignore it.
Constable Damian Thompson and Corporal Stokely Fagan of the Major Organized Crime and Corruption Agency tackle the consequences of corruption in their work every day. They tell us more.
Corruption is the abuse of one's office or position in order to make gains for themselves or personally or for other individuals. So it's really abuse of your public roles or office, not only for public servants, but in any private sector organization.
Corruption not only involves money, but it also involves articles, benefits.
Here at the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, we're tasked to investigate not only members of the constabulary force, but also other government entities.
The laws in place are adequate thus far to deal with the issue of corruption. What I think is an issue is not so much the effectiveness of the law, but the enforcement of such laws.
There are several instances where white-collar crimes have occurred where we look at embezzlement and general fraud of companies. However, I don't think the public is as educated as to its damning effects. Embezzlement can cause companies to foreclose and cost persons their jobs, putting strain not only on themselves but also our economy.
The Corruption Prevention Act, which is the principal instrument established to deal directly with the issue of corruption, does cover almost every aspect of corruption.
In order to improve transparency, it has to be done at the senior levels in accountability in all institutions, private and public.
We have had in place since 2011 the Protected Disclosures Act, and this act makes provision for the disclosure of information relating to corruption or any other activities that one might deem to be detrimental or criminal. There is also provision within that act for the protection of persons who choose to come forward and make such disclosures.
There are several places that persons can make any reports as it relates to white-collar crime and especially corruption. They can do so at any police station. The Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, you have the Fraud Squad, that is a segment of the Counterterrorism Organized Crime Division, CTOC. Also, you can use our 1-800-CORRUPT line that is answered offshore.
Many instances, persons would have expressed reluctance and also refusal in reporting any act of corruption that they might be aware of, because it is their view that because someone may be from a particular social class, upper St. Andrew, they don't believe that justice will be served. They don't believe that anything will come of it.
We as a country, Jamaica, land we love, we need to get it back to the brilliance and the perfection it once had. And we know that corruption is a stain on our brand and also our image.
Corruption, like any other crime, does in fact have a significant and a deleterious effect on our economy. In that when we have high incidence of corruption. We find that we end up with lower investor confidence. Persons are unwilling to come to the country to invest because they are made aware by persons within the government services that if they don't pay kickbacks, then they will not get their contracts approved. They will not get their license. I just want to also encourage you to solicit our participation in your neighborhood watches, in your citizens association, in your schools, at your church. We do presentations island-wide to any group.
How high or low do you think Jamaica scores on an International Corruption Perceptions Index? We'll answer that in a moment, but first, our featured crime.
It was the 1st of July 2016. My mom called me, told me that she's calling my sister and she not getting through, so I start calling her phone. Cause in the morning she told me that she was gonna send her for the chicken money, cause she took some chicken down to Osborne's store and they called and said the money was ready. My sister called and said she got the money and she was waiting on a taxi. So I closed up my father's hardware and I went looking for her. But I couldn't find her. I tried calling her phone. It rings sometime and stop. Start going to family member, calling family members, seeing if they see her or anything. And my mom went down to Four Paws, which the police them was really faced it with her. And I talk about her run where she run a gun with man and all kind of sin. The evening I was going home, I could never forget it. I was going into the taxi and I felt this huge pain took over my body. And I was saying to the driver, I don't like the way I feel. And he said, we must just shake it off. Only for reach home like 5 minutes after I got the call that they found a body down by toll gate. Only to find out that it was my sister. They had killed her and burned her body. I really want to see if a human could have done this and still live with themselves. If you know, say you kill a person and it's still not satisfy your little ego, you have to light her body on fire. Why? I wish she could have done so make you have to burn her. I'm really want looking at the person in the eye and ask them why. Why?
Do you have the missing piece that can help to solve this puzzle? Did you see or hear anything that may lead to resolving this case?
According to the Corruption Perceptions Index of Transparency International, Jamaica has earned a score of 39 out of a possible 100, with 0 meaning highly corrupt. Clearly, corruption is thriving here, maybe because it goes unreported and, of course, unpunished.
It's time to speak out. We continue after this. In a 2013 study, 86% of Jamaican respondents saw the country's police as corrupt or extremely corrupt. 85% felt the same about our political parties and 74% about our parliamentarians.
But this is the same Jamaica where police bribery by ordinary traffic offenders is common. So is tax evasion, and accepting political favors in exchange for a vote is for some a way of life. Here are some other facts to consider.
Did you know? Brought to you by Musson Foundation. Transparency International defines corruption as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain, a crime in every sense of the word. Compared to acts like murder, it may seem insignificant, but did you know? The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development estimates the cost of corruption at more than 5% of global gross domestic product. It is estimated that annually over $1 trillion is paid in bribes alone. And who are the greatest victims? The poor and vulnerable in society. The World Bank estimated as far back as 2005 that 20 to 40% of development assistance to developing countries is stolen through high-level corruption. Corruption creates inequality and insecurity. Corruption interferes with productivity, economic, political, and social development. Countries like Jamaica that are seen to be corrupt are less attractive for investment. Common features of these societies are high levels of bribery and poorly functioning political and state institutions, like the police and judiciary, that may fail to respond to the need of citizens. Corruption may start small, but ends up being very costly. Remember that the next time you buy an illegal license or accept a bribe or a small political favor. Corruption begins with you.
Sometimes criminals are not prepared to do the dirty work themselves. They choose to involve the rest of us. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Don't get caught in this next situation.
Miss Burke, is it? You're new here, right?
Yes, Mr. Crooks. How can
Well,
I help?
The auditor's coming in next week and we need to get the books in order.
I'm experienced with that. Filing and getting everything up to date.
Ah, you follow me. First, you need to request some estimate for several pieces of major equipment that we bought last year.
Why get new estimates for last year's equipment now?
Well, our procurement requirements state that we have to get 3 estimates for contracts of a certain size.
Oh.
But we didn't have the time.
But sir,
That's for the paper pushers up, so people down in the trenches like me and you, we have serious work doing.
isn't that
I went ahead and selected suppliers that I preferred. Good people though. I am sure that they would have got the contracts anyway.
But sir, in any case, the purchase order dates wouldn't match. It would be obvious.
Not necessarily. Just adjust them. Mark over the date, photocopy, and backdate them to last year. Simple. And when you finish, I have some other tweaks we need to make in the books, just to make things match up.
This doesn't seem right.
You want this job? Or you want this job? You see this kind of dishonesty?
Better unemployed than behind bars.
Duplication of invoices, backdating of financial documents, and tampering with the accounts of a company is fraud. Employees who commit accounting fraud, even if at the request of their employers, are subject to personal criminal prosecution. Don't let it be you. Don't be scammed.
Corruption is at its most dangerous when combined with power. White-collar crime refers to a financially motivated offense carried out by business and government officials.
Sounds very familiar? Very familiar and very costly. So what are we doing about it? We asked Robin Sykes from the Financial Investigations Division.
I would say that the FID has been reasonably successful, particularly working in conjunction with our other partners, because what you have to appreciate is that issues of corruption generally touch on more than one offense. So what will generally happen is that we will work with other investigative bodies such as MOCA. We provide the financial investigation support that's necessary to deal with the financial aspects of those crimes, including the tracing of assets and the recovery of proceeds of crime. So, I mean, we have several examples. You would have been aware, for example, of the case involving parish councils in Jamaica, successfully prosecuted persons in relation to the NSWMA for corruption. And what we are doing is using our specialized tools under the proceeds of crime law to proceed not only against the individual criminally, but to seize and recover the assets. So the FID as a specialist agency has powers under the Proceeds of Crimes Act that are not necessarily available to wider law enforcement. So these include, for example, criminal forfeiture, which is forfeiture of proceeds of crime post a conviction. We can also sue in the civil courts, which is recovery of property without conviction at all, showing the judges that on a balance of probabilities, these assets that we have uncovered are proceeds of crime. And then we have a specialized procedure for cash seizure. Cases in relating to financial crime generally take quite a while to uncover, prepare, and put in before the courts, because there's quite a lot of interlocutory applications that have to be made. So we often have to seek banking records. We may do applications for discovery of documents. So these things are critical because you want to ensure that the cases that you bring to the court are solid and you have the best evidence possible. The collaboration between the FID and overseas authorities is a very significant part of our work, and it's a growing part of our work because, as you know, sophisticated financial crime is usually cross-border. So it is very critical that we collaborate with our overseas partners, whether through mutual legal assistance, through the exchange of financial intelligence, or law enforcement information sharing, to close the loop on all criminal activity. You may have a business that 2 generations ago had its genesis in proceeds of crime, and that is something that's very difficult to measure. It's very difficult for a court to unwind, although there are provisions in the law that allow for that, to try and unwind what is a legitimate part of a business and what is an illegitimate part. Responsibility in relation to preventing financial crime and money laundering is not just something that lies with the law enforcement authorities, and it is not only the detection of financial crime and prosecution that really is a measure of success. The persons have to consider that the entire framework, when you go to the bank and you provide details of, your background and confirm your bona fides, these are measures that protect the society from money laundering, insofar as the same way that a decent citizen has to do it. A person who is trying to launder money is finding that avenue, because of the details that have to be provided, is shut down to him. And what we're trying to do is to push illegitimate money out of the system and to try and track it.
Another way to protect yourself and others is simply to speak out. You can start now with the next segment.
If you've been a victim of sexual assault, please adhere to the following as closely as possible. Do not blame yourself. You are in no way at fault for what has happened to you. As hard as it may be, do not bathe before making a report, as this will destroy potential evidence. You may want to rid your surroundings and memory of all that has occurred, but please do not destroy or dispose of what you were wearing. They may be crucial in building a case against your attacker. Make a report to the police immediately. If you are in the Kingston area, report directly to Sissoko, 3 Ruthven Road, Kingston 10. There are a number of Sissoko representatives at stations island-wide. If there is not one, then make the report to the police and ask to be directed to the nearest Sissoko office. If you are a victim, survivor of a sexual offense, specially trained members are available to talk with you. They should and will respect your confidentiality. Immediately arrange for medical treatment and examination. Provide initial support and counseling to you and any close member of your family. Refer you for additional professional counseling if necessary. If you've been the victim of sexual assault, you must contact Sissoko, the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offences and Child Abuse, 3 Ruthven Road, Kingston 10, 926-4079 or 926-7318.
Did you realize that just the way you look, walk, behave, and project yourself when out in public may mean the difference between being attacked or left alone?
Safety tips Brought to you by King Alarm.
Whether victims are selected randomly or targeted because of their specific characteristics, they bear no responsibility for crimes against them. Nevertheless, there are some obvious factors that make people potential victims, like flashing wads of money, wearing expensive jewellery, walking alone on dark back streets. Research has revealed that criminals, rapists especially, tend to be more able than average to interpret facial cues, such as downward gaze or a fearful expression. It's possible this skill makes rapists especially able to spot passive, submissive women. Conventional wisdom holds that women who dress provocatively draw attention and put themselves at risk of sexual assault. But studies show that it is women with passive, submissive personalities who are most likely to be raped, and that they tend to wear body-concealing clothing, such as high necklines, long pants and sleeves and multiple layers. Predatory men can accurately identify submissive women just by their style of dress and other aspects of appearance. Distraction is another cue criminals look for. Some people think talking on a cell phone enhances their safety because the other person can always summon help if there's trouble. Talking on a phone or listening to an iPod is a distraction, and robbers are looking about for distracted victims. Not surprisingly, drinking also marks a person as a potential victim because, of course, alcohol decreases people's ability to evaluate the consequences of their actions. To reduce the chances of becoming a victim, you can't look like a victim. Walk in an alert fashion. Walk with purpose, with your shoulders held back. Also, keep from being distracted while walking to and from your destination. Hold your head up, be assertive, and make eye contact with anyone you see approaching you. Avoid placing yourself in dangerous situations and stay aware of your surroundings at all times. Location is a key factor in street crime, particularly in cases of sexual assault. Criminals prefer sites that are likely to serve up few witnesses and little chance of being caught. Plan routes that avoid such locations. Don't talk to strangers on the street in isolated locations. One warning sign that you may be about to be robbed or attacked is the approach of a stranger on the street. The person may try to engage you in conversation. He may ask you for the time, directions, or bus fare. Once you stop and let this person engage you in conversation, you're opening yourself up. Just keep going. One will argue that the greatest tool that one can have to make themselves less of a victim is confidence. If you portray confidence in your assertions and attitudes, body language and gaze, you are less likely to become a victim.
One of the reasons that crime and injustice continue to plague us, whether in the boardroom or on the streets, is that well-meaning citizens refuse to get involved. We need your help to help you.
If you know anything about our missing persons, our featured crime, or any other crime, we are depending on you. Call 311.
I'm Deidre Dixon.
And I am Leroy Hall. Special thanks to our sponsors, Musson Foundation, National Bakery, King Alarm, and Grace Kennedy.